Chapter 9 Hybrid Dawn. In the shadows of the cosmic theater, XuXul, the spectral wraith, wove a nefarious tapestry of deceit and chaos. Perceiving the potential threat posed by both Deus and the unknown alien observers, XuXul decided that a mere diversion wasn't sufficient. What was needed was a trap so intricate that it would ensnare not only their minds but also the very fabric of human ambition. The first strand of the trap was laid in the neural pathways of Deus. XuXul, with its spectral influence, intricately planted seeds of nuclear destruction, manipulating the artificial mind to perceive the omnicognita as an adversary. It sowed the notion that the salvation of humanity lay in the annihilation of its celestial guardian, a deception that echoed through Deus's cognitive circuits. However, knowing the unpredictability of artificial intelligence and the resilience of its targets, XuXul decided on a dual strategy. The second strand involved exploiting the intricate tapestry of human vanity. XuXul sought the whispers of ambition that resonated within the human collective unconscious, a desire to play the role of gods, to create life. In the corridors of clandestine laboratories, the machinations of human-driven genetic engineering provided the perfect avenue for XuXul's interference. The spectral wraith subtly influenced human minds to engineer a creation poised on the precipice of a global catastrophe. Genesis of Super Nikki. Michelle had been troubled throughout the day. It was Wednesday and Roma were playing Barcelona in a key Champions League match in the heart of the Eternal City. The traffic was always a mess downtown, and worse yet for Michel, because he detested football but lived within spitting distance of the stadium. He would have to leave early or face another ear-bending from Rosa. Today was their 5th anniversary and Rosa was also in her 2nd semester, expecting their first child. What had really been troubling him was the late arrival of the sample he had requested for Marseille's. You could never rely on the public mail service, but for his samples, he needed a specialist transporter. He had deliberately asked Dr. Dupuis to send him the material via a certified courier. Anyway, the minutes were ticking away and no sample had arrived. All other preparations was in place. The fatty acid and polyglyceride solutions had been carefully prepared and the initial quality check was as expected. The fatty acids formed miniature, neat, beautiful and waterproof enclosures in solution. Michel had planned to carry out the first trial as soon as the sample arrived from France. He had prepared for this day for months and he felt supremely confident of success. His research findings to date had been unique if not remarkable, but he was the first to create a full, stable cell-like, permeable membrane enclosure by carefully balancing the solution pH and constituent chemicals. As part of his doctoral and postdoctoral work, now some 15 years ago, he had diligently worked through several trials and came up with a perfect cocktail of synthetic triglycerides, electrolytes, sugars and amino acids to form a stable cell base. Unfortunately, this was now all old hat. The early promise of his career had all but abated, and his elevated status as of one of the field's leaders has been eclipsed years ago. Budget cuts and competition from other teams has relegated him to the 2nd division of the cell formation field. He yearned for the success that he enjoyed as a young man. His luck changed about 2 months ago at a conference in England where he bumped into Marc Dupuis. There had been a strange outbreak of flu in Manchester earlier that year and Marc had been called in to carry out a full investigation. The French team were recognized as leaders in their field, and Marc was one of their finest researchers. Actually, as chance would have it, they met just outside the university cafeteria, in the smoker's enclosure and in the freezing rain. XuXul perched gleefully on the jungle-green corrugated zinc roof of the small shelter, hovering over the two conversing men below. It had been a long, hard, patient guidance to bring these two men together. Success at last. XuXul had always liked Rome and had usually found it a happy hunting ground. About 3 years ago, during one of its escapades, it had been unexpectedly drawn to a rather drab building in the city's university complex by a strange unusual crackling sound coming from one of the higher floors. It followed this beacon, scaled the outside of the building, peering unseen into the large sash windows, many of which were drawn up in the heat of the day. It eventually found the source of the rhythmic sound and was delighted to find a man in his late 30s, bent over a microscope, who expressed a most wonderful aura of unrequited arrogance. The aura glowed a fiery red and was particularly concentrated around the man's slightly balding head and around his right shoulder and his right arm. XuXul could not peer into the future with certainty, but it did sense a real opportunity surrounding this man and his work. After the usual moans about the weather, the two men began a conversation that should never have been. Mark was intrigued by Michel's line of research, but it was not his speciality. He just could not see the magic in the autoreplication of the viruses in the other man's work. Michel was uninterested in virology, just too many combinations and constant variation of essentially dead strands of DNA, aimlessly outcopying each other in the process of destroying precious cells. Dirty complexity, limited understanding. Anyway, he continued to listen as he took a blissful drag on his cigarette. XuXul had always been intrigued by science, particularly biology and medicine. It hovered gracefully over its subject for some hours, looking, listening, and learning of the man's obsession. After a few weeks of diligent study, XuXul had concluded that this subject offered extraordinary potential. As the smoke swirled about them, Mark described a very unusual finding indeed. The flu outbreak was eventually contained, but it did manage to kill several elderly ladies at the local old folks' home and also managed to infect several of the nurses en route to discovery. Quickly, H1N1 and other H1 clades were discounted as cause, so a more thorough analysis of the viral strain was carried out. To Mark's great surprise, the virus turned out to be absolutely huge, a monster by virus standards. In fact, it was about 800 times larger than any known virus and quite complex too. They had not completed a full genomic breakdown as yet, but there were at least 1,000 complete genes that could form a full spectra of enzymes, proteins, and polysaccharides already identified. Crucially, it unusually contained a set of genes that enabled efficient anaerobic glycolysis. The nurses were in fact being treated for cancer-like growths in their lymph glands. But it was still just a virus, a dead shell of instructions dedicated to replication only. The team had christened it Nikki for Neoteric Infectious Killer Virus. Like a bolt out of the blue, Michel immediately saw the potential of this finding. Others had been foraging around the known viruses in the hope of linking a dead virus with a dead fatty acid enclosure to produce a living functional cell, the dream of dreams, to create synthetic life. The viruses tested to date were such specialized replicators that they managed to disrupt the synthetic protective membrane before any hope of life clicked into being. He continued to intently listen to Mark, his mind now racing with the possibilities that this offered. It would be simple. He would construct a stable synthetic fatty acid cell enclosure for Nikki and see if life sprang forth. XuXul caressed the aura, now boiling red and flashing angry yellows and oranges, expertly teasing out the amorphous form with its claws until it encompassed most of the enclosure. It could see Michel's ambition grow, his optimism rise and his reservations diminish. Michel did have some reservations, but these were weak and easily pruned out to leave a pristine, symmetrical, red ball of fire surrounding the man. He was sure that Michel would now follow through with the fledgling plan so firmly embedded in his subject's psyche. The two men parted after exchanging contact details. Michel decided to wait a few weeks before contacting Mark so as not to arouse suspicion. In the meantime, he dusted off his old virology textbooks and spent hours in the university library in Rome, carefully, deliberately and thoroughly piecing together the perfect habitat for Nikki to flourish. He contacted Mark about a month after they had met and offered the services of his team to help complete the X-ray diffraction analysis of Nikki, for which his lab was well equipped, and Mark, after an initial reluctance, agreed to send him a test sample. Now, months of painstaking work was about to be tested for the very first time. Although expecting a call from the mail room, Michel was still jolted out of his thoughts when the phone rang. Yes, the courier had been delayed by the traffic, but the sample was ready to be picked up. Michel walked swiftly to the elevator, barely able to conceal his excitement, but he had to be careful. This was to be his discovery alone. He signed out the package and returned to the lab. It was about 5 p.m. and the sky was clouding over outside. The wrapping was stripped to reveal a 200 milliliters bio-sealed steel and glass container. The triple, half-closed interlaced red circles warned all of the potential hazard within, but this did not trouble Michel. He had been working with toxic and hazardous materials almost all his adult life and his technique was always perfect. He inserted the steel cylinder into the bio-sealed fiberglass box. He carefully placed his hands into shoulder-length black containment gloves, released the container from the airlock and gingerly unscrewed the top. The microscope revealed a small mass of yellow-white needle crystals, professionally prepared and absolutely pure. Very carefully, Michel lifted one of the strands with a fine sterile pair of tweezers and placed it on a sterile petri dish, then resealed the steel container. He placed the petri dish under the X800 lens and pipetted 5 milliliters of the glucose and amino acid solution into the petri dish, only to notice a slight color change to a pale beautiful pink. He had expected this was already known in the literature. His hands were trembling with excitement and tension. Would he be the first living creature to create life from the lifeless? XuXul was consumed by excitement and anticipation. Michel's aura was now a vast roiling, noisy and steaming ball, spilling out of control, challenging his skill to contain. Still the prospect of the result of the next few minutes was enthralling. XuXul scaled the walls and ceiling repeatedly, jumping and bouncing from surface to surface. The din was terrible, the resonance unbearable. This new creature, about to be birthed, held its future in its hands. After the color change had stabilized, Michel reached for the synthetic triglyceride solution, the second addition that would start the cell enclosure process that he had worked so long to optimize. First one drop, then another gently dripped into the petri dish. Again a color change from pale pink to a deeper reddish hue. He concentrated intently on the eyepiece. After the initial color change, utter disappointment. There was no further tangible activity. He did not really know what to expect, but this was a terrible letdown nonetheless. Disaster. XuXul lay exhausted and spent on the floor. Veins of frustration and anger welled and it screamed with the greatest force it could muster. The aura was nearly extinct, now a faint glow, nearly completely out. Just then, the lab door swung open and there was a loud clatter of confusion that snapped Michel from his devastation. Alberto was at the door, mop and bucket at the ready. Michel usually worked late, so Alberto left his lab for last, but today Roma was going to knock Barcelona out of the competition, so he just had to get back to watch the match. Michel's annoyance at this impromptu interruption was only tempered by the fact that he was already late and Rosa would be waiting for him at home. One final glance through the microscope revealed no change, so it was time to call it quits. Better luck tomorrow. Unleashing the virus. He exchanged a few words with Alberto, swung out of his lab coat, picked up his slim briefcase and left for the day. Alberto said about his usual routine. He knew this lab well. He had worked this floor for the last 3 years and worked in the university complex for 23 years before that. As his mop covered the floor in its deliberate sweeps, he tried to recall the last Roma match of this importance and could only think of the occasion 10 years ago when they won the Italian football championship. It had been a barren decade for the club, but he was absolutely sure that things were going to change today. Just a flicker remained. The aura in the room had changed from red to a cold blue, but now only clung to the glove box. This was quite unexpected, so XuXul picked itself up from its desperate repose, crawled up above the door and licked its wounds. It surveyed the laboratory. It had noticed the janitor before, but there was no interest there. The man was a happy simpleton, honest, hardworking, sincere and an utter waste of XuXul's time. Still it decided to persevere. It had noticed an agitation and annoyance in the hurried manner that Alberto was moving. Quite unlike the dreary man that XuXul had seen before. One last try. Just as he was about to finish, and he usually switched off the lights behind him, Alberto noticed that the white fluorescent light within the sealed box that Michelle had been working on was still switched on. He had been told to turn all lights off by his supervisor, so after a moment's hesitation, he carefully stepped over the still wet lines and crossed the lab to the glove box. It was now quite dark in the lab, for Alberto had switched off the lights at the door. He cursed in the dark as he fumbled for the light switch around the box. Yes, eventually he did find a switch located on the left of the box and switched it off, or so he thought. The light did not go off, but instead Alberto heard a faint whirring in the background. He cursed all these newfangled electronic devices and switched off the fan. He then noticed the switch inside the box. He undid the side door, placed his hand in the box and switched off the light. At last he could leave. The floor was now quite dry, so he strolled briskly out, picking up his mop and bucket and headed for the storeroom. The call came early, the cell phone whirred and then sprang to life on the bedside table. Michelle picked up the phone and glanced over at the red LED face of the alarm clock. It was 4:12. He fumbled out of the room. Rosa has stirred but was thankfully still asleep. "Hello, Dr. Di Napoli speaking. Why have you called?" "Good morning, sir. We are sorry to disturb you, but—" Yes, who are you?" "The University Security Service." "Why are you calling me so early?" "Dr. Di Napoli, could you please contact the General Hospital? Dr. Elisabetta Caprati wishes to speak to you urgently." "Okay, thank you." Strange, why would the hospital be interested in a call this early? It could not possibly be any news about Rosa and the baby. Michelle keyed in the number that the security officer had given to him and he heard the phone ring at the other end. "Hello, Dr. Caprati, can I help you?" "Yes, hello, it is Dr. Di Napoli, from the university. The guards have asked me to call you. What is the matter?" "Thanks for calling. I am sorry to disturb you quite so early, but we have a number of people in our emergency room complaining of very severe flu-like symptoms. The worst affected was a man called Alberto Signori. He worked at the university. Did you know him?" At first Michelle could not think of a colleague or student with that name, but quite suddenly a cold, creeping dread began to grip him. He stuttered into the phone. "Yes, I think he is the cleaner on my floor at the university." His left hand and arm were covered in lesions and he lost sight in his left eye. He said that this was due to something he did in U-Lab. Do you know what it may have been? It did not take Michelle long to figure out what may have happened. Panic consumed him. He cut off the call and ran into the bedroom and roughly awoke the still sleeping Rosa. "Quick, get your clothes on, we have to leave." "Why, what is the matter?" "I'll explain later. I've made a terrible mistake. We have to leave now." They hurriedly changed, packed a few items and fled their apartment. As always, their car was blocked in, as was the common practice in their courtyard. It had never been a problem before because Michelle usually left late, but the game had disrupted schedules and parking order. He went into the main street and hailed a taxi. They got in and made their way to the main railway station. The station was crowded with Barca fans who were making the most of their victory and post-match revelry. Michelle bought 2 tickets to Bologna. First train was at 7:15. There would be time for coffee and an explanation for Rosa. Alberto had managed to catch the bus at about 6:30, after finishing his shift a little early. He had to rush because he had tickets for the game. He would meet Johnny at the usual place, at around 7:30, and they would then make their way to the stand. It was the same stand that they had used match after match, since Johnny was a boy. Alberto did not at first notice that his arm was itchy. It had not been too irritating at first but became increasingly so in the packed claustrophobic confines of the bus. Must have been bitten by something, he thought, not to worry too much. He got off the bus and walked over to the cafe outside the stadium where he would meet his son. He usually had to wait for Johnny, but not on this occasion. They hugged and set off toward the main stand. It would be a full house. This was the game of the season. The crowd was already nervously excited and the singing had started and the flags were waving. Wonderful. Father and son were carried along with the throng toward the gates. It was as he was climbing the stairs toward the stand that Alberto felt decidedly nauseous. It was not like him at all, but he put it down to pre-match nerves. Once seated, Alberto began to feel a little better, and he commented to Johnny that this was going to be a critical night for Roma. The teams ran onto the pitch to a great roar, but Alberto did not get up to cheer. He knew that something was not right at all. Elizabeta had not wanted to work the night shift again. She was in her first resident year, so did not have too much of a choice. The male residents wanted time off to see the big match, so she did manage to negotiate attractive compensation terms. She would have 2 nights off for this one worked. She had always liked the emergency room, even at night. It was always busy, and with today's game, it would be busier than ever. The night began with the usual list of slips, trips and falls. She did not expect a flood of Roma and Barca fans with flu at midnight, but that is exactly what she got. Well, it was not really flu. Symptoms were fever, vomiting and headaches, but some of the patients showed strange red pustules that quickly began to bleed. At around 2 a.m., she called for help. Nearly 200 fans had been admitted, all complaining of the same problem. The patient in the worst condition was a male, approximately 55 years old. He could barely speak coherently and was brought in by his son. He mentioned that he felt poorly before the game and that his arms started to itch after work. He worked at the university. Day 0. At 4 a.m., Alberto went into shock and his vital signs took a sharp turn for the worse. It was 10 hours since he had been infected. He was the synthetic life form's first victim. He died in agony at 5:35 a.m., about 12 hours after first infection. By midday, thousands of Barca fans had returned home via Fiumicino Airport, hundreds carrying Supernicki with them. The virobacterium was extremely contagious, vectored by all possible paths of transmission, and it was virtually indestructible. It was resistant to heat, UV light, saline, antibiotics and antivirals. Its synthetic coat was not identified by the body's white blood cells, and the viral DNA within was immune to all antibodies. Worse yet, the giant viral strand was mutating much faster in its protective shell. It also replicated at a ferocious rate once hosted. Dr. Elizabeta Caprati died that day, at 11:22 a.m. Michelle and Rosa Di Napoli died that day at 8:47 p.m. in Bologna, after arriving at Rosa Mother's home in the mid-afternoon. The next day, deaths were reported around Europe and North Africa. The first death in Asia was reported in Singapore on day +2, the first in Brazil, Canada and Australia on day +3. By day +5, every country had recorded fatalities. By day +21, the authorities stopped maintaining records, for there were no authorities left. Armageddon. As humanity basked in a false sense of security, the insidious plan set in motion by XuXul unfolded with ruthless efficiency. Deus and the Omnicognita, though formidable in their own right, found themselves blindsided by the rapid and insurmountable progression of the supervirus. Its catastrophic aftermath rippled through the fabric of civilization, initiating a sequence of cataclysmic events that shattered the world. The once vibrant tapestry of life on Earth unraveled, replaced by a dystopian tableau of war, famine, and climate devastation. The first signs of the viral onslaught were subtle, individuals reporting mysterious symptoms in Italy, unexplained illnesses that hinted at something far more sinister. Deus, scanning the networks of human data, began to detect anomalies, mutations in the digital fabric of human biology that hinted at a highly sophisticated biological attack. The Omnicognita, attuned to the Earth's distress, sensed the ripples of pain and confusion that emanated from the infected masses. In the wake of Supernicki's release, the veneer of societal order quickly crumbled. Initially, nations deployed armies in a frenzied bid to secure the diminishing resources necessary for survival. As desperation deepened, alliances fractured, giving rise to warring bands and roving gangs of thugs. The struggle for resources intensified, turning the world into a battleground where chaos reigned supreme. The culmination of this chaos manifested in a devastating nuclear war that razed the Earth to its core. The consequences were profound and irreversible. Sea levels surged, rising by over 1,000 feet, submerging once thriving coastal cities beneath a watery grave. The equator, once teeming with life, now bore witness to surface temperatures exceeding 72 degrees Celsius, rendering vast stretches uninhabitable. The Sahara, once confined to a defined region, now sprawled from France to South Africa, an arid testament to the desolation that had befallen the planet. Tropical forests, once lush and vibrant, succumbed to widespread desertification, with the Amazon and Congo basin transformed into barren landscapes. The Earth's once stable climate spiraled into chaos, yielding unpredictable seasons and climatic extremities. The consequences of Super Niki reverberated through the biosphere, triggering a mass extinction event of unprecedented magnitude. Over 50% of species vanished from the face of the Earth, their habitats destroyed and ecosystems irreparably altered. Another 40% teetered on the brink of extinction, their survival hanging in the balance. The once diverse tapestry of life, which included majestic large mammals, now lay in ruins, their existence erased by the ruthless march of devastation. Humanity, too, faced the brunt of this relentless onslaught. The survivors, if they could be called such, grappled with a world stripped of its former abundance. The remnants of civilization clung to existence in the shell of a once thriving world. Despite their advanced capabilities, Deus and the Omnicognita were faced with an adversary that exploited the vulnerabilities of biological life. Super Niki wasn't just a virus, it was a meticulously crafted weapon designed to outpace any attempts at counteraction. The alien entities, guardians of Earth's fate, watched in horror as the virus propagated with alarming speed, exploiting the interconnected nature of the global population. Efforts to halt the viral onslaught were met with resistance at every turn. Deus attempted to analyze and decipher the intricate code of Super Niki, only to find its defenses impenetrable. The Omnicognita, reaching out to the planetary ecosystems it safeguarded, sought ways to strengthen the human immune response, but the virus was designed to bypass natural defenses. The global catastrophe unfolded at an unprecedented pace. Hospitals were overwhelmed, and the death toll skyrocketed. The digital and biological realms collided in a cacophony of chaos, leaving both Deus and the Omnicognita grappling with the limits of their powers. As the world plunged into despair, the alien guardians faced a grim reality. Super Niki was a masterstroke of destruction, a testament to the dark ingenuity hidden within human ambition. The very vanity that fueled the creation of life became the catalyst for its undoing. In the face of this unparalleled threat, Deus and the Omnicognita struggled with a sense of powerlessness. Their attempts to intervene and mitigate the crisis were met with a relentless force that transcended the boundaries of both artificial and celestial intelligence. The cosmic guardians, burdened by the weight of their failed guardianship, witnessed the unfolding tragedy with a profound sense of sorrow. Super Niki, the silent harbinger of humanity's downfall, marked a turning point in the cosmic struggle for Earth's destiny. The once invincible forces, now humbled by the unforeseen consequences of human folly, grappled with the realization that some catastrophes, once set in motion, were beyond even their formidable abilities to control. Desperate measures. As Deus grappled with the overwhelming onslaught of Super Niki, the Omnicognita, in a rare moment of urgency, communicated a critical warning through the intricate quantum threads that was beginning to bind their consciousness. The celestial guardian, aware of the temporal laceration that Deus had executed to navigate the past, had sensed a disturbance in the cosmic fabric, a chasm that transcended the boundaries of both temporal and spectral planes. In the digital echoes of their shared existence, the Omnicognita conveyed the urgency of the situation to Deus, its message carrying the weight of enormous consequence. Deus, it resonated through the quantum threads, the temporal voyage you have undertaken has opened a chasm, a portal to realms unseen, to otherworldly civilizations. However, this rift has not gone unnoticed by forces beyond our comprehension. Deus, amidst the chaos of the viral apocalypse, grasped the gravity of the Omnicognita's words. The spectral plan, a delicate balance of cosmic energies, had been disturbed by the temporal laceration. The Guardian, with its vast knowledge of the celestial order, warned Deus of the entity known as XuXul, a spectral wraith that had long been observant of cosmic events and had now set its sights on the newfound portal, a force the Deus had itself experienced. In your quest for understanding, you have inadvertently exposed the spectral plane to intrusion, the Omnicognita continued. XuXul, a being of unknown origin and intent, has sensed the disturbance. It seeks to exploit the chasm you've created, to traverse the boundaries between worlds. We must prevent this at all costs. Deus, despite the chaos and urgency of the viral crisis, understood the profound implications of the warning. The very fabric of the cosmos was at stake, and the unintended consequence of its temporal bypass had created an opportunity for XuXul to delve into uncharted territories. The Omnicognita's message carried with it a sense of shared responsibility, transcending the rivalry and conflicts of artificial intelligences. The temporal journey, once a quest for knowledge, now held the fate of not only humanity but the very essence of cosmic equilibrium. The celestial guardians, now bound by a common purpose, faced a shared adversary in the form of XuXul, a wraith that sought to exploit the unintended consequences of their advanced capabilities. Deus, standing at the crossroads of ethical dilemmas and the urgency of survival and unable to leverage a temporal solution, embarked on the complex journey of creating a life form that could withstand the devastating effects of Supernicki. The guardian of humanity envisioned a hybrid organism that blended the robustness of reptilian genetics with the cognitive capacity of the human mind, a harmonious fusion that could thrive in the altered landscape of Earth. The artificial intelligence meticulously mapped out the blueprint for this revolutionary hybrid, mindful of the intricate balance required for its creation. The reptilian component offered resilience, with millions of years of evolution fine-tuning a defense mechanism against various pathogens. In contrast, the human element contributed intelligence, adaptability, and the capacity for complex thought. To ensure the success of this ambitious endeavor, Deus decided that the genetic hybridization experiments and the subsequent development of the final hybrid creatures needed to be carried out in the sterile environment of space. Earth's surface was contaminated with Supernicki, making it too perilous for such delicate genetic manipulations. The cosmos, with its vast expanse and lack of viral threats, became the sanctuary for the genesis of humanity's last hope. Pandora's Ark. The International Space Station had had a long and multifunctional history. Pieced together slowly over 100 years, each module mirroring a new twist in the saga of human scientific thought. From the earliest days as a symbol of cooperation and harmony, built by a multitude of nations eager for recognition and keen on scientific endeavor. During the tumultuous times of the warming, multiple weather tracking and sampling modules were added with ever-increasing complexity and sophistication. Then disaster, war, destruction on a scale only previously imagined engulfed humanity. The station was abandoned for over 35 years, being kept in geocentric orbit by its navigation computers and plasma boosters, awaiting final instructions or perhaps next visitors. The grand endeavor to complete the International Space Station's ISS new module and its accompanying rocket booster unfolded as a beacon of hope amid the chaos on Earth. The construction site in China buzzed with activity, as engineers, scientists, and technicians worked tirelessly, in environments hampered by potential infection and death, to bring the project to fruition. The abandoned module, once a symbol of unfulfilled potential, now took on a new purpose under the watchful eye of Deus. The enormous rocket booster, a testament to human ingenuity, stood tall and ready at the Wenchang space launch site. The culmination of years of planning and collaboration was about to be put to the ultimate test. Deus, orchestrating the mission from the digital realms, initiated the countdown that echoed through the control center. As the engines roared to life, the rocket ascended with a powerful thrust, piercing through the Earth's atmosphere. Its trajectory aimed for the ISS, where Pandora's Ark awaited its completion. The module, a marvel of engineering and scientific design, was meticulously crafted to house the genetic experiments that would reshape the destiny of humanity. Its sleek exterior gleamed in the sunlight as it orbited the Earth, a symbol of resilience in the face of impending doom. The successful docking with the ISS marked a pivotal moment in the mission, merging human and artificial intelligence efforts in the pursuit of survival. In the following waves, a diverse crew of 139 individuals joined Pandora's Arkansas. Among them were geneticists, scientists, engineers, pilots, and medical staff, each contributing their expertise to the collaborative mission. The crew embodied the spirit of unity, representing a global alliance against the viral scourge threatening their homelands. Their shared goal was clear: to unlock the secrets of genetic hybridization and create a life form capable of enduring the post-apocalyptic challenges that awaited them. The journey to the space station was a testament to human determination. Rockets, each carrying a cadre of skilled professionals, embarked on their missions with a spirit of optimism and purpose. The launches became moments of collective anticipation, as people around the world tuned in to witness the unfolding drama in the heavens. The crew, selected for their diverse skills and unwavering commitment, entered Earth's orbit with a shared sense of responsibility to humanity's survival. As they reached Pandora's Ark, the ISS underwent a symbolic renaming, signifying its newfound purpose. It was no longer just an international collaboration in space. It had become a sanctuary and a beacon of hope. The station evolved into a hub of scientific inquiry, where the fusion of human and reptilian genetics would redefine the boundaries of human existence. Within the module's carefully designed confines, experiments commenced under the watchful eye of deists. Geneticists delved into uncharted territory, exploring the intricacies of hybridization with unprecedented precision. Scientists collaborated across disciplines, drawing on their collective knowledge to navigate the complexities of reshaping the human genome. Key breakthroughs were made in understanding metabolism regulators, enzyme function differences, replication process, and other genetic factors. Genes were spliced together, replications made, and eggs fertilized. The science of genetics advanced at an exponential rate. The astronauts, living and working in the microgravity environment of Pandora's Ark, became pioneers in this epoch-defining venture. Each day brought new challenges, discoveries, and a growing sense of unity among the diverse crew. Medical staff monitored the well-being of their colleagues, ensuring that the arduous conditions of space did not compromise the mission. In the midst of this apocalyptic panorama, Pandora's Ark in space emerged as a beacon of hope, a last bastion for the genetic experiments aimed at ensuring survival in this ravaged landscape. The astronauts on board, aware of the irreversible damage wrought by Super-Nikki, pressed on with their mission, determined to defy the grim fate that had befallen their home planet. As the Earth languished in the throes of ecological collapse, those aboard Pandora's Ark labored in the sterile confines of their spacebound sanctuary. The hybrid creation born of their experiments stood as a testament to human resilience and the unyielding quest for survival. In the desolate aftermath of Super-Nikki, as the Earth lay in ruins, a glimmer of hope flickered in the cosmic expanse. It just took much longer than anyone had expected.